Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I just noticed some couple of messages in the chat. So yeah, nice to see good old friends. And yeah, don't give the chat to the child. Okay. I'm just gonna wait for a couple of minutes for joining. Good to see you, Kelly. Long time.
Yeah, after a long time. I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Wonderful. We're expecting a lot of participants, so just gonna wait for another couple of minutes. Normally people do take 5-6 minutes, if everybody's okay with that. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. While we're waiting for the others, just for the benefit of all the participants, this session is being recorded and it will be publicly available on our social media. So just letting everybody know. I know when you join, you normally get a message as well, but just for the benefit of everyone, just letting everybody know. And also, if I could ask everybody to log on to menti.com, that's MENTI. So we'll do a little bit of activities during the duration of the course. So if you could go to menti.com and log in, and when the activity comes in, I'll give you the code so that you can do that. Sorry, my video is playing up. Okay. I think we can start with 3 minutes the hour. So thank you very much and welcome to establishing and operating a hybrid PMO training offered by PROPRAC consultants. My name is Fahim Jaffer, and I'm the director of PROPRAC Consultants. I'm just waiting for letting people come in as well. Sure. Sorry. So we'll continue now. So well, once again, welcome to establishing and operating on a hybrid PMO. My name is Fahim Jaffer. I'm director of PROPRAC Consultant. PROPRAC Consultant is an Australian project management company. We have been in the business for almost six and a half years, and we deliver project management trainings and provide consultancy services, not only for the project management, but also for PMO establishment. So in fact, establishing a PMO and providing consulting to PMO is our specialty. We have done work across a lot of countries, in Australia, England, US, France, Germany, and in Middle East. So we've got the team has a pretty good experience. This training will be delivered by myself, and it is part of the free training that we offer every month. One of the advantages of these free training is that you can claim 1.5 videos against this, and also 5 loyalty points, and each loyalty points is equivalent to about $10. So that makes about $50, and you can use those loyalty points to basically register for our courses. And I'll give you some information towards the end of the event. I'm a certified project management instructor from PMI. I'm PMP and RMP as well, and I have SAFE certification as well. I regularly teach project management to bachelor's degree and postgrads at the University of Sydney and also at Torrens University. So I'll give you a bit of my background. Today's session is about hybrid PMO, but I think before we talk about what the approach, what the methodology, or what the type of the PMO we're looking at, how about we look at what the PMO really is and what is the nature of the function of the PMO. Now, according to the research, that an average life of a PMO is 2 to 4 years. And this is a very authentic research, which I went through during my PhD studies. I've got a question for you, and I would like to basically have your view. If you could go to menti.com and put in the code 27436066. I would like to have your view on why do you think it is the reason? What is the reason for PMO to have such a small lifespan? So pretty good to see what you guys think. So if you could go to menti.com and use the code 27436066 and put in your response to it. What could be the reason for this short lifespan of a PMO, which is 2 to 4 years? Compliance, lack of perceived value, rigid processes. That's right. That's right. I have my colleague Yasser helping me with this session. So Yasser, if you could please keep adding new guests. Thank you. Meant to be for life, too much compliance, lack of perceived value. Yeah, that's right. Rigid processes, short-term endeavor, organization restructure. Absolutely. Lack of executive support. That's right. Org strategy changes. Absolutely. Lack of sponsor. That's a very good one. Yeah, lack of sponsor is really good one. That's spot on. Lack of executive support. It's good. Poor implementation. Yeah, that's something that we can also think about. When we, and I'm guessing when you say poor implementation, it refers to, how the PMO isn't. Okay. For all the guests who have just joined, if you could go to menti.com, as you can see at the top of the screen, menti.com, and use the code 27436066. We're looking at the reasons for a short lifespan of a PMO. We know from the research that a PMO normally, average lifespan of a PMO in an organization is about 2 to 4 years. I'm interested to know what you think, based on your experience, why that is the case. So if you could go, thank you very much, everyone. So if you could go to menti.com, MENTI, and use the code 27436066 and input your response. Okay. Sponsor, rigid process. Rigid process is another one. That's right. We're going to touch a little bit on it as well. So I'm just going to give, I know some of the people are still writing, so maybe another minute or so, and to our new guests as well. Lack of sponsor buy-in, absolutely. Short-term endeavor, poor implementation. Yasi, can you see my screen? Okay, good stuff. Thank you. Just want to make sure that everybody can see a screen. So there I can see 12 people writing. So good. Okay. Okay. Now, thank you very much, everyone. I think you're absolutely spot on. And you can keep adding your information. So I'm just gonna stop here and let's go back to, so you're absolutely right. So there are multiple reasons sponsor buy-in, but the number one I think that we need to consider for the PMO is how effective your existing PMO is. Is your PMO adding value to your that your organization appreciates? That's the number one key question. How is your PMO perceived by your organizational leadership? Do they think that you are a management overhead, or do they think that you're adding some value? You're adding, helping them reach their strategic goals, right? Do your executives rely on you, on your PMO? And when I say you, I'm guessing you're part of the PMO, to help them make informed decision making. Does your PMO has the respect of the leadership? These are very important questions, and this all relates back to how effective is your PMO is. The support for, as you know, for a PMO to be successful, and it is very important for the longevity of the PMO that you have an executive support. The second thing is how flexible your PMO is. And when I say flexible, it is how quickly the PMO can respond to the market condition. We live in a very disruptive and changing market environment. Gone are the days of the traditional environment, traditional slow sequential approach. According to research, about in early 60s and early 70s, the life of an organization was about 30, 40, 45, 60 years. By early 21st century, it basically went down to 15 years or 8 years. And as we move ahead, things are changing fast. The organizational lifespan is getting shorter and shorter, and it is because that a lot of organizations are not able to keep the pace with the changes. Similarly, PMO is very important. How well your PMO reacts to the change and help your organization achieve strategic goal is very important. Is your PMO able to support different ways of working, agile approach or hybrid approach or traditional approach, right? Whether we like it or not, there may be a traditional agile approach in the market now, but traditional is going to stay here. There's no way that you can build a house, at least up till now, in a modular fashion and move in, and while the rest of the house is being take an agile approach while the rest of the house is being built. So these are some of the things that we have to take into consideration, and that is something where we need to focus as a PMO team to look at how we are adding value. Another thing which is very important from a PMO aspect is how does your PMO measure success? Are you measuring the success of your PMO? How do you know that your PMO is making an impact, right? The PMO sphere of influence is more than just providing, status support and tools, but it is basically the people that PMO deals with. How comfortable your stakeholders are with you. Do your stakeholders come to the PMO for help, or is it the PMO that they're looking for them, right? So do you have an open door policy that your stakeholders have so much confidence in you that they come and say, okay, this is the help we need? And I think these are the very key important questions, and this is what impacts our the survival of the PMO, in terms of the organization. For a PMO to be successful in today's VUCA world, and I'm going to explain you what VUCA stands for, we need to be ready to respond to rapidly growing organizational agility. Now, we need to let go of traditional rigid waterfall approach and focus on adopting, the new agile lean-based function, right? VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, right? It basically describes a situation of constant, unpredictable change that is now basically a norm in today's world, right? And VUCA demands that you avoid traditional outdated approaches of management and leadership, and also in our day-to-day working, right? We have seen that the traditional approaches work, in certain areas. Yes, the traditional approaches, sequential approach is very successful, but usually sluggish and hierarchical. If we look at the organization, the successful organization today, you will notice they are not very hierarchical. They are basically letting people, make their own decision. The empowerment, the teams are empowered to make decisions. Now, traditional approaches traditionally limits the effectiveness in a turbulent and ever-changing environment. So this is something that we have to really take into consideration when we are building a PMO. If you look around us, the successful PMOs are the ones that have accepted the disruption as the norm, right? Instead of following a rigid process and tools, they are evolving as the business is evolving, and they're evolving the project governance, right, to much more flexible and lean approach. I do want to clarify one thing very quickly. A lot of people confuse lean with agile approach. Lean approach and agile approach are two different things. Yes, they complement each other, but agile is iterative or incremental approach to deliver something, whereas lean is not exactly agile. It's basically an elimination of waste. It is focused on reducing the waste. Maybe for example, handover from one team to another. The time it takes to handover, so reducing that time, or in the manufacturing. So these are manufacturing concept, but these days, the concept of lean portfolio, lean PMO is really picking pace. And we have to understand that for a PMO to survive in today's disruptive world, we need to be able to respond to our customers. So that's something that I just want to set there. And how we can do that is only if we are an empowered PMO, right? A PMO that has no power, that has no authority, cannot function, cannot deliver. That's the reality. That's the practical world we live in, right? PMO needs to be the bridge between the strategic objective and organizational success. They have to provide that kind of a approach. They have to be that kind of a bridge for the organizations, right? Now, taking these things into consideration, let's look at some of the challenges that the modern PMOs are facing, right? The first question, the first thing that comes into mind is the lack of governance, agility, governance in the context of agility. And what I mean is that, you cannot continue focusing on tight project governance when your environment is very dynamic and changing, right? You cannot force a process-oriented approach in a software development environment, right? For a PMO advocating for project governance in a predominantly agile-focused IT department, it's a very hard sell, right? Nobody would like to be there, right? Similarly, the integration of a formal, effective project governance. These are the challenges we know we need as a PMO. We need to provide governance. That's our core function. That's our bread and butter. But how do we make it successful? How do we make our customers, our stakeholders, satisfied and happy with what we are doing, right? The challenge is, and there are many reasons for that, is, especially if you look at the core agile values, people over processes. I've come across a lot of Scrum Masters, not all of them, I must say, who have a view that, they don't have to do any documentation. There's no governance required, which to me is incorrect. If you look at the agile values, people over process, it does not say, or it does not mean that you let go of processes, but it means that the focus is more on people, and you take processes as it helps you to deliver the work, right? It says do not be bogged down in the paperwork, but still do require governance. That's the message that it is the agile values deliver, right? Some sort of governance in terms of traditional governance will always be there. We haven't found a way to where the PMOs are fully agile and there's no traditional approach, right? So these are some of the challenges. Then we have, be responsive and adapted to support the organization. It aligns with the number one, which is the lack of right governance in the context of agility. If the PMO is not responsive and PMO is not adaptive to what's happening around us, the organizations don't need it. I don't need to work with a team that is hindering my progress and delaying my response to my customer, right? I need a team, I need a support, and this is like for any small, big organization that can help me achieve my project, my organizational goals. That's just the reality now. The other thing is the focus on lack of benefit realizations. Traditionally, projects and PMOs have always been focused on, iron triangle, scope, budget, and schedule. The world has moved way ahead of this iron triangle. Yes, we need to focus on iron triangle. Yes, iron triangle is important. Yes, the project managers needs to be on top of scope, budget, and schedule. But the million-dollar question is, what is the point of spending the money and time and effort on something if it's not giving me an output, if it's not helping my organization grow? And this is where the concept of benefit realization comes in. We have to focus on benefit realization, which is, in simple term, is what is the benefit or what is the output of the project? How is the organization affecting from how is the organization is benefiting from the output of the project? That's what the benefit realization is, right? And the final one is the failure to recognize by the PMOs, the modern PMO is the traditional approach is necessary, but probably insufficient to deal with the rapid changes and unpredictability. We talked about VUCA. That's the biggest challenge that we have. And if you look at the current research, the research tells us the PMOs are still failing. Like we talked about it, every life cycle of a PMO is 2 to 4 years. So these are some of the challenges. What is the impact if the PMO is there? An organization has spent time and effort to set up a PMO, and if the PMO is not performing, then what is the impact of it on an organization? Inconsistent project prioritization and selection. That's the number one problem. When we talk about strategy delivery, we talk about the first thing that comes into mind is how we're going to prioritize the projects and what type of projects we will consider to deliver our strategy, right? Inconsistent project prioritization, inconsistent or incorrect project selection leads to dissatisfaction in the customer, because you're basically not delivering what the customer wants, and that's one of the biggest challenges. Opportunity cost is very high. You miss strategic initiatives. Response to change is not quick enough, right? That's the market is going very fast. Your organization is not responding because you have not picked up the right projects to respond to strategic objective. Your delivery does not align with your organizational strategy. That creates a problem. Lack of business IT alignment is a constant source of frustration for both parties. That's a very important thing to consider. Think of the work or project that you have done recently, and think of how much you have interacted with the business as a project manager, as a PMO manager. How much in communication there was between business and IT. Now, being IT, and I can tell you because I've seen the both side of the fence, IT is very technically oriented, right? You give them the scope, and IT is focused on delivering the scope of the project. But the business is not only looking at the scope of the project. Business is looking at what is the benefit of spending this time and money so that I can, so that I can grow with it. What is the benefit of doing something? How can I use the deliverable of the project to increase my sale or increase my customer satisfaction? So there are quite a few impacts that as a PMO we need to consider. Now, traditionally, PMOs have not taken that into consideration. Traditionally, PMOs have been very rigid about environment that they work in. That's the process. That's how you're going to go. That's how you need to deliver the project. The modern PMO needs to rethink this strategy with the environment, with the disruption around us. You cannot be focused. You cannot restrict to a certain process or tool. You need to continuously look at how you can manage that environment, how you can satisfy your customer. I'm gonna pause here for a minute and see if there are any questions from the audience. Yes, could you please check and let me know? And you guys have access to we have not muted anyone. So if you want to ask a question at this stage, I'm more than happy to respond, or I'm gonna take questions towards the end as well. Okay, thank you. Okay, did you know that stakeholders perceive 52% of PMOs as successful? And that's another research. That's another research that we have come across, and that's a research from a Canadian scholar. Right? He worked with a survey organization and surveyed about 263 organizations across the globe and came up with this assessment. Now, what are the key reasons for the PMO failure? Let's look at them. We talked about some of these: lack of strategic alignment. We talked about it because there's no alignment between the PMO and the business. People don't want PMO. I don't want PMO for the sake of reporting. I can get somebody else to do the reporting for me. So that's a lack of strategic alignment. Lack of responsiveness. We talked about that as well, right? If it's taking me long to get a project done, or if it's taking me long for a PMO to respond to what the information I need, I don't think so. I'm interested in having an entity just for the sake of delayed response. Management overhead, and that's a very important question. And I've personally worked in an organization where PMO was perceived as a management overhead. And the reason for that, the PMO was set up for whatever the reason. There was a reorg. The new organization or the new leadership did not think that the PMO was required. And they felt that the PMO team was a management overhead and they were not adding value. And that only happens if the PMO is not only perceived as inefficient, but also looked up as not adding value to any of the business, any of the organizational strategy. If you notice in the organizational restructure, and so this is for the guests who have gone through organizational restructure in their professional life cycle, you will notice when there's a restructure, the first thing they look at is the PMOs, because PMOs are not funded, they are not bringing any revenue, they are considered as a management overhead. So we look at restructuring the project management office, literally realizing the benefit, the impact of losing a PMO function within the organization. And I'm happy to share something that I've come across quite a few organizations where they have gone through reorg and they have released the PMO staff just to set up a new PMO within 2 months. And literally, I mean it within 2 months, because they realized that by releasing a certain number of staff, they still need that function. So governance placement. We talked about the concept of traditional approach, how we do it. So that's another thing that PMOs needs to move away from, so that we can be more responsive. And the last one is lack of stakeholder management. Projects are delivered by the people for the people. And I always say that, and we need to take this into account. If you're not dealing with our stakeholders, if you're not communicating with our stakeholders, if you're not transparent with our stakeholders, no matter what we do, how successful the project is, we will find ourselves in a situation, the PMOs will find themselves in a situation where organization is not happy with it, because there's a lack of communication. And that's in some cases the number one cause of the PMO failure. In today's dynamic, disruptive world, neither traditional nor modern agile approach can be perfectly applied. The way the world is changing, and as I mentioned, frankly, there's no definite approach anymore. You look around yourself and you will notice that the way that you have set up a PMO in organization X is different from your setup, the way you set it up in organization Y. And there are many factors to it. There's no defined documented process of setting up a PMO. Governance is a key function of the PMO and will probably always remain so. The balance is required between the traditionally inflexible and rigid governance and responding to the fast changing world around us. That's what we are now looking at. And that's something that we now need to, as a PMO, we need to focus on, right? Now, and the reason I went through this whole discussion is I want to set up give you a feel for what we are looking at, right? So the training is about establishing and operating on a hybrid PMO, but I think we need to first identify what a hybrid PMO means. So if I would like to get your thoughts on it, if I could ask you to go to menti.com and use the code 2743 and answer the question, what do you think hybrid PMO means? And we'll just to help you guys. So if you go to menti.com, the code is 2743 6066. What do you think hybrid PMO means? Oh, sorry. Waterfall and Agile. Yes.
Excuse me, what's the code?
It says 2743 6066. If you look at it, it's at the top of the screen as well, 2743 6066. Agile within waterfall. That's interesting. Waterfall in Agile. Fast governance. Not one size fits all. What? I can see people are sliding. Avoid early convergence. Light governance. I'm not sure if it's light governance, but yeah. Agile within waterfall. Not one size fits all. Agile waterfall marriage. Yeah. Hopefully happy marriage. Pragmatic, absolutely. Risk-based milestones. Tailored to the customer. Yeah. Adjustment to project type. Fast governance. Lean governance. That's good. Very good one. Outcome focused. Outcomes and output. Fit for purpose. Absolutely. Fit for purpose. Yeah, that's a good one. Test and learn. You will notice as as we read these, based on your input, a lot of concepts that are developing from Agile. So we are focusing, the audience is focusing more on Agile approach. But it would be good to think about, when we talk about the hybrid, like I said, research tells us that the waterfall approach will be there. It's not going anywhere, at least in the near future. It might be a good idea to consider what are the waterfall approaches that we need to have, take into account. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Let's go. You're absolutely right. When we talk about hybrid PMO, most of you got it absolutely right. It's basically a combination of traditional, with Agile. I just add that it's a traditional strategic planning activity with Agile and lean delivery approach. And the idea is, why do we take this? The idea is to provide rigor without rigidity. So we do want a governance rigor there. We don't want to let go of our project governance. That's our bread and butter. That's what we organizations look for. But at the same time, we want to make sure that there's a good happy marriage between our delivery team and our business objective, our strategic objective. Right? Now, there is no set definition of what hybrid PMO means, right? One way of setting up a hybrid PMO is by combining traditional strategic planning. There could be another way. Every organization, when they look at setting up a PMO or a hybrid PMO, they look at look at their own situation, their own organizational environment. Every PMO have, when we look at setting up PMO, especially in terms of hybrid PMO, we need to look at two key characteristics here, or two key functions. So now one is the characteristic, what type of characteristic that we want in our PMO. And the second one is the activities or tasks that we are expecting that PMO to perform. Now, one can argue that you need to take the same approach when you're setting a traditional PMO. Yeah, that's right. But we are now talking about the key attributes of the hybrid PMO. So what I will do is I will try to explain you, based on my experience, how what kind of a characteristics and what type of the key activities and tasks we do. Now, I can't go into the nth level detail, so I'll try to keep it at a high level, but just to give you a feel for it, and then when towards the end we can have a discussion. I'll open up the question and answers. So the characteristic that we are looking at is responsive to change. I think we talked about it. This thing keeps coming up. The PMO needs to be responsive to the change. It needs to have a collaborative governance approach, right? It's not, here's a process, here's the template, go and do it. It's about, okay, how do we make it successful? How do we make it easy for our stakeholders so that we can get the right information from the right people and pass it on in the right format to the audience, to the stakeholders, right? And the third one is continuous innovation. Now, continuous innovation is kind of a concept from the Agile. You don't be afraid to fail. If it's something is not working, pick it up, redo it, find another way to approach it, but don't be afraid to. If you think traditional PMO, you would notice there was a concept that there's a fear of governance policemen when we talk about the traditional PMO. Organization would look at it, project manager would traditionally look at it. Oh, hang on a second, here's the PMO guy again. He's going to ask me about reporting. He's going to ask me about the finance. He's going to ask me about my status. I knew to do it. So it was a lot of reporting for the sake of reporting, right? That's the tradition. That's where we are now looking. Now, continuous simulation, what works well, what to get the right information, what is the best way to approach it. So be flexible. Then that translates into three key activities, right? Strategic alignment. That's the key. A hybrid PMO needs to have a strategic alignment. Portfolio prioritization. I'm going to touch base a little bit more on these. And the third one is the traditional/agile delivery. You would notice that I did not say lean delivery, but traditional agile delivery. Lean is a characteristic of agile delivery, but that's me. That's my way. I'm not saying that people may have a different view on it. But the point that I'm trying to make is that we cannot ignore traditional delivery, and that's why we have hybrid, right? I'll give you an example of car manufacturing. When you're manufacturing, there are a lot of manufacturing processes are traditional sequential process, but at the same time, new cars have a lot of IT component, a lot of software automation in it. So that's an agile. So I'm sure when we're building the new cars, there's a combination of traditional approach, which is more towards the manufacturing, how you build the car, the body of the car, and how you integrate the electronics must be an agile software development approach. Okay. Now, sorry. So let's continue. Strategic alignment. Communicate strategy and vision to the project team. That's the role of the hybrid PMO. Ensure that the team understands the impact on the organizational objectives goal. The idea is to bring synergy between organizational strategic goals and project deliverables, right? And then monitor and track benefits realization. absolutely important, right? Without that, it's not going to work, right? Then portfolio prioritization. Prioritize project pipeline based on strategic objective, right? And we're not talking about backlog prioritization. We're not talking about sprint prioritization. We're talking about portfolio prioritization before the backlog prioritization, right? What's your product roadmap? What's the organizational objective, strategic objective? Where do the organization see a certain product over the next 6 months or 1 year? Based on that, you build your product backlog, right? Your project team, one of the key important thing, and one of the things that in my experience that I've noticed is the lack of understanding from the delivery team on the impact of the work they're doing. Brief your project team on the motive, on the intention behind that prioritization decision. It's not what you think, it's what the business demands. It is very important, right? Communicate the trade-off decision between the schedule, budget, and risk. Right? That's the job of the hybrid PMO. Communicate risks and dependencies. Don't assume that people understand. Don't assume the IT environment understands. Right? Lean project delivery. This is where we talk about continuous flow of project. Right? And what it means is you have developed a pipeline of the project. Move resources from one project to another as seamlessly, at the end of the project. So minimize bench time for your resources. You establish a value stream. Yeah, of course, the concept has come from Agile and Lean approach, but that's how you do it. You have a continuous flow of the project. And it does require, I be very open about it. This approach does require a lot of maturity in your organization towards project management, and a lot of maturity, in the project management team as such to how they're going to manage it, right? Embed quality in all aspects of project governance, right? There's a very famous saying from Joseph Duran, who's the famous quality guru. He said, quality must be built in through planning, design, and continuous improvement. That's what we need to do in PMO as well. We need to embed quality in all aspects of project governance so to minimize disruption, right? Focus on small batch, right? Rationalize project reporting. Don't build, 20 pages dashboard reports, 20 pages PSR, stickle. Avoid duplication. That's the lean approach. Avoid duplication. Do not create more work for that. And it is important to understand, you would notice that I'm still focusing on project reporting. A lot of Scrum Masters that I've come across, their view is they don't need to do a report. Hang on a second, you do need to do it. You may do a Kanban, you may do your information radiators, but at the same time, you need to provide some communication back to your execs. If your execs are not comfortable with the approach, with the delivery that you're doing, you're not going to get a buy-in for your next project. You're not, the project execs may stop it. If the execs are not comfortable with the status of your project, it's very hard to continue with that project. Continuous innovation. I talked about it. Fail fast. Seek feedback and apply learning. Don't be afraid. Don't push your processes, right? And empower your team, project managers, people you deal with to make a decision, to help you make good decisions, right? So that's the key thing that we need to do. Now, what I'm going to show you is a model that I have worked with. That's a key, it's a model. And again, disclaimer, that's by no means this is the only model. What I'm going to show you is what I think has worked for me in some of the places where I've set up a hybrid PMO. Everything starts with organizational strategy. Whether we have a traditional PMO or we have a hybrid PMO, we start with organizational strategy. It has to look at what the strategy is looking at. Now, strategy feeds into your portfolio management, right? So if you look at it, we need to take into consideration the pipeline planning. What is our goal? What is the organizational goal? Long-term and short-term goal. You may look at a rolling wave planning. You may have a 3-month plan, 6 months and 9-month plan. But you need to look at the strategic alignment, whatever your plan is, and how you do that. You look at your market response. You look at, you may have you may be looking at doing some innovative product, right? You may have a need for compliance and regulation. This is something that will always be there, right? Benefit realization. These are some of the portfolio management function that a PMO has to do it. There's no two ways about it. This is how we need to function. That's the role of the PMO, right? And this all feeds into product roadmap, right? We embed that market response, innovation, compliance, regulation, benefit realization into a product roadmap. Based on that, if we need a compliance project, there's a lot of federal state government is introducing, federal government's introducing a lot of new initiatives for COVID, right? So organizations are scrambling, in government sector scrambling to get projects set up to respond to that. So there's a requirement there. There's a market response there, and these all feed into, and you'll notice that if you're on the screen, strategic initiative, prioritized, and selected. This is a two-way process. Your product roadmap and project roadmap is an ever evolving. It evolves with your strategic initiative, and all this is basically within. If you look at this within this box, you have this resource management and financial management. That is all entire portfolio management. Now, there's a certain aspect of traditional approach, and there's a certain aspect of agile approach. But that's how it works. The second one, the next step is that we need to look at the delivery. Now, in a lot of organization, and I still have to come across an organization, except which is fully software development. The project PMO is supporting both traditional delivery and agile project delivery, right? Compliance projects are usually very traditional sequential approach centric, whereas the agile project and software development, product development are very agile centric. For agile, there's a Kanban, burn-up charts, and traditional burn-down charts. That is there, that's there. So we established we have a portfolio management function, and that portfolio management function then feeds into our project delivery, which is basically a traditional or agile delivery. So the important solution then comes in, PMO is still responsible for risk management, portfolio risk management, portfolio issues management, holistic schedule, agile or no agile, traditional or no, or anything else. Exec still wants a view. They still want to know how one of the projects, is dependent on other, where they need to spend. They need this information based on to make an informed decision. So dependency management will always be there. Dashboard reporting, stakeholder reports. These are some of the functions that a PMO, hybrid PMO, will have to deliver, right? And I think that's the message that I'm trying to send. One of the things that I found very useful when I was setting up this kind of approach, and this is something where I set up at a multinational organization, and it was very well received, because this whole portfolio function, if you look at this portfolio function, that is the key to how you approach your project delivery. This whole function is the key. And it is important that organizations define this portfolio function, portfolio management approach, before continuing on any project management, especially hybrid approach. Okay. Hybrid delivery is not the solution to each and every project. In the same way, we cannot use agile for every approach. That's the reality. That's what we are dealing with. That's something the world is going. But again, we cannot ignore traditional, but we also cannot ignore agile as well. So, and hybrid PMO will struggle to survive, and this is based on my experience, and basically justify in a strong hierarchical organizational structure. Hybrid PMO will not function properly in a strong hierarchical function. For a hybrid PMO to be successful, you need to give that PMO flexibility for decision making, empowerment to innovate, right? And empowerment towards resource utilization and prioritization. Without that empowerment, hybrid PMO will not function. That's the key. So if there's a continuous distraction, continuous engagement, continuous pressure from senior executives, the hybrid PMO will struggle to survive. That's the one. The paradox of the situation is that there's no single clearly defined process that we can be applied. So it's all, try and learn. Pretty much this is where the Agile approach is. And you tailor it. I refer to my own my experience when I set up that approach. It took some time for that approach to be appreciated and deliver results. That's one of the another challenge with the hybrid PMO is you may not get immediate results because it takes time. And when you're setting up a PMO, that kind of an approach, you need to educate your stakeholders. So that's something I also. I'll stop here. That's pretty much I want to discuss today. But if you have got, and I'm happy to take questions if you've got questions. I also want to highlight that we do a lot of, I deliver a lot of PMP CAPM trainings, certification. I do it on a regular basis. As part of this free training, I'm offering 10% discount for all our attendees. So please, if you're interested, my next session is starting from 6th of September. Please join. It's a virtual session. It's over 6 weeks, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays, 6 to 9 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. If you register by 25th August, you get 10% discount. So that's the other thing is, well, I will be releasing my establishing and operating a hybrid PMO detailed course. It's a 12 hours course that I've developed, and I'm talking to organization about registering it for certification. The first session is scheduled to start on 6th of November. If you register by 25th of October, I'm offering a 10% discount, but I hope you join the sessions. I intend to, the way the course is structured is to help you build a PMO, hybrid PMO. It's very activity-based work, especially where I would highly encourage PMO professionals to get in touch, and I'm more than happy to provide more information how the course is. You can register for it at the moment as well. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate your time. I've kept 20-25 minutes for you to ask any questions. Happy to respond to any questions you've got. You can look into the chat as well if you have a question in the chat. Okay, thank you very much, guys. So you mentioned that one key attribute of hybrid PMO is to communicate risk and issues. Shouldn't the hybrid PMO or any PMO also recommend and drive resolution of risk and issues and not only communicate? That's right, Ibrahim, absolutely. What I was trying to give you a view of, that's some of the key function and attributes that you need to take into consideration. Now, why it is important for a hybrid PMO to communicate is a lot of time if you look at the Agile approach, they have a different way of looking at the risk. They have a different way of looking at issues, right? And communicating. A PMO, a hybrid PMO, when you have more traditional Agile approach, you need to find a way to pick that information from the Agile projects and present to your stakeholders. So that's what I meant by, but absolutely work with the relevant people to work towards the resolution of the issues and risk as well. Thank you very much for the question. I've got a question. How is rigor and rigidity balanced in governance? Very good question, Bina. Thank you very much for the question. So that's why I say rigor without rigidity. So rigor is asking project managers, working with the project managers to make sure that they provide the information that you need, for informed decision making. Rigidity is you basically tell them that's the template you can follow. You cannot provide me any other format. So that's the balance. And I think that's what I mean by that. And this is just one example. There are other examples, right? Similarly, in terms of resource management, resource forecasting is another example, right? The way the agile approaches resource forecasting is totally different from the traditional approach, right? So you need to find a way to how you can work with them, with the agile teams, and help them forecast, resource forecasting or capacity forecasting. So that's what I mean. Right? I hope I answered your question, by the way. Okay. Excellent. I probably should have asked. I hope Ibrahim, I answered your question as well. Okay. Any other questions from anyone?
Yes, you did. Thank you very much, Fahim.
Thank you. Okay. So what? So question we've got: any thoughts on what a good relationship looks like between a hybrid PMO and product managers? Can you simultaneously have empowered product managers who are tasked with achieving business objectives and an empowered PMO who wants to know what will be delivered? So I think, thank you very much, Stuart, for this question. I think if I could just rephrase this question. So so my view is the empowered PMO is not who wants to know what will be delivered. Empowered PMO is the one that is working with the stakeholders, whether product managers or agile teams of the business, to come up with the right metrics to measure. That's the key. If we have an alignment, so the relationship is when, and this is where when we're going through, somebody said marriage between agile and waterfall. There has to be a happy marriage between the PMO function, PMO team, and their stakeholders. The stakeholders should be comfortable in asking PMO, how should we do this, rather than PMO saying, you need to do that. There's a big difference, right? If you have the confidence in somebody's capability, you would go and ask and seek advice rather than wait for them to tell you how to do it, right? So I think that's something that I would say that if you define my way to approach to build a good relationship is agree on a metrics, especially in terms of product managers and PMO, agree on a metric that you want to measure so that it's easy, so both of you get the same, PMO and the product manager get the benefit of it. So if you agree on a metrics, then you can agree on how you're going to measure and report on it. I hope I answered your question. Yeah, good, thank you. Any other questions? We've got a lot of time. I'm happy to take questions. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for attending the session. Really appreciate that. And if, by all means, please do, if you are interested in CAPM or PMP, please do get in touch. There's a link there. I'll be sharing this training on our social media channel as well. So if you have any question, by all means, reach out and let me know. But thank you very much for everyone for your attendance. Really, really good to see, and it's good to see some of the old faces. Wonderful. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks a lot. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I'm going to stay here if anybody wants to have a chat, by the way.